people steadily joining in. So yeah, let's jump in. So hi there, and thanks for tuning in to this UbiOps webinar. I'm Yvonne Fafjams from UbiOps, and today I'm joined by Johan Renard from Reef Support. Hi, Johan.
Hi, Ivan.
To those of you who joined the last session, thank you so much for joining us again. If this is your first time joining, it's great to have you here. I'm going to start out by giving a bit of a background on the format we're going to go through to get everyone up to speed, and then we're going to jump in. So today we're going to be exploring using AI to create a sustainable environment. We'll be touching on a lot of stuff, including computer vision and ecology, but the emphasis here is going to be on using AI. So we're going to be going a bit deeper into machine learning model reliability, version control, infrastructure, basically MLOps. So we're going to start off with an introduction, and then we're going to go on to navigating the challenges involved in the topic and how to solve them. Then maybe we can talk about some insights into trends for 2024 later on if there's time. And of course, we're going to be finishing off with the audience Q&A. So don't forget, if you think of any questions during our conversation, don't hesitate to send them in via the comments, via the chat, and we're going to address those during the Q&A later on. So if you're with me so far, feel free to throw a thumbs up in the comments so I know we're all clear. Otherwise, yeah, there we go. I can see some coming in there. All right, let's go down to business. So Johan, thanks you so much for joining me. Why don't we start with an introduction? So would you like to tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you, Ivan, for having me today. I'm Johan Renard, co-founder and CTO of Reef Support. A bit about myself. I'm half French, half Dutch. I had a bachelor in computer science at the TU Delft, and I just wrapped up my master's in AI at the University of Amsterdam. Um, I grew up in several locations scattered around the globe and had the opportunity to visit many beautiful places, which gave me a good understanding of the importance of nature and protecting our planet. So I've always been passionate about utilizing AI and technology for the good of our planet. So during my time at TU Delft, during my bachelor there, in the context of a competition, I co-founded Reef Support, for which I'm very grateful that it has given me the opportunity to focus on applying technology for the enhancement of marine biology and strengthening the blue economy through innovation.
Great, that's quite a background, quite a lot going on there. So for those unfamiliar, what is Reef Support? What do you guys do?
All right, yeah, of course. So for a bit of context, it's important to understand why this mission is important. So although coral reefs, they only cover 1% of our ocean floor, it's important to know that they support more than a quarter of our marine biodiversity, and over 1 billion people directly depend on reefs for food, income, and also coastal protection, as reefs do serve as a great natural barrier against incoming pounding waves. But unfortunately, we already lost or severely damaged more than 50% of our reefs worldwide, and studies projected by 2050, all reefs will be at risk unless action is taken now to reduce these drastic threats. Fortunately enough, we have dedicated scientists globally working hard every day to continuously monitor, protect, and restore this precious ecosystem. Because it's crucial to monitor long reefs in the long term to get critical data that is necessary to understand the impact of their actions, but also give a good understanding to authority what the actual impact is of losing these reefs. So fortunately enough, we have about 60,000 marine protected areas globally. But however, another problem is that only 1,000 of them are fully protected, and that is because reef monitoring is very cost heavy. It requires a lot of very expensive equipment, diving expensive, and it's also very difficult to scale reef monitoring solutions, as it's quite a time consuming process, as well as a complex process that varies across different locations, as reefs are quite complex ecosystems by themselves. And one of the main bottlenecks for many reef managers and research organizations is the time it takes to um, actually collect data and process the collected data. So you can imagine for a single dive, they can take up to 150 pictures, for example, of a small area in the marine protected area that they monitor. And those pictures can then take up to 7 days or so to manually color correct and annotate every single image to really assess what is happening in that collected data. But for the use of AI in combination with other technologies, we can aim to automate this process. So that is what we're doing at Reef Support. We aim to provide accurate, standardized, and actionable data to help protect and monitor these ecosystems in a much faster, better way.
That's awesome. Yeah, really great mission. So, like, what makes your solution so unique, though, the solution that Reef Support is providing?
Um, yeah, so most research in the area, you have to imagine, is being done by universities. So that although research has been going great, it does take a lot of time to actually provide proper solutions for this. So Resupport is actually one of the few companies itself. We're a startup that is focusing on creating solutions for this. One thing that we're specifically focusing on is computer vision for on-site in situ collected data. So data that is collected underwater, and our focus is on segmentation for one, and that is something that um, is not being done much in the sense that most of the focus on computer vision is placed on traditional point classification replacement. So you have to imagine that um, the way that they manually label images is by um, randomly you have a random set of points that are created on the image, and then that is manually labeled. So most solutions that are being developed to replace that is in terms of replacing the process itself by having better suggestions as to what the specific point patch is. But at Reef Support, we're focusing on completely automating this task in the sense of creating a full segmented model for core reef imagery. Um, and I think the fact that we're a small team, a company focusing on creating solutions for this, it also adds a lot of agile and user-centric approach to it. We aim at providing quick solutions, working with different partners in creating tailored solutions to their issues as well. So yeah, that's a bit of how we present ourselves to the world.
Awesome. Can you tell us a bit about the infrastructure you had kind of before and after using UbiOps, like a bit of comparison there?
Right, of course. Well, before actually having used UBOs really came at a perfect time for us. The time before, we were actually very much focused on the research and the development of our model, and not putting into production as of yet. So we had very different approaches to doing so, but we were mainly doing so in notebooks and VMs, quite well, classical research approaches to how to go about your data exploration, training simple models, testing various solutions out there. So it was mostly in the space of using SageMaker and other solutions that are out there. And this was not the most efficient and intuitive manner of doing so as well. There's a learning barrier that comes with using cloud solutions. And one thing with our team is that we have quite a small team. So we did have interns here and there helping us out in the context of their thesis or just in the context of an internship. But also having a small team, you want to have the simplest solution possible. Um, so these cloud solutions, they're great, but they do um, come at the cost of having a bit of a learning curve to using them. So that was one thing that we dealt with that actually slowed us a bit in the beginning and got us. We had to get used to it quite a lot. And after a a couple months of working on this solution, we finally were at the stage where we could put out our model. Um, to be actually used for our partners to try it out and assess the actual um, quality of our solution in the field with real life data. And at the time when I was looking out there for different solutions, because we were using AWS at the time, so I was looking at solutions using AWS itself, but that also comes with quite a bit of a learning curve, with a lot of different services that are possible to do so, a lot of different manners, and you don't not just sure how which one to go for, which one to pick. And at the time, I got contacted by Yannick, the CEO of UbiOps, to see um, if maybe it means something for us to try out their tooling, and it came at a perfect time. I checked out their website. The documentation was very clear. The platform looked very intuitive, so I was very excited to try it out because it seemed like a perfect solution for ourselves. And it actually did. So I got started using it very quickly. So we were helped by the UbiOps team to set it up very fast. The platform itself, like I mentioned, is very intuitive. So in a matter of a couple, I think 3 days, 4 days, it was to set it up. We had a model in production that was working out great with very easy um, with a very easy way to monitor it as well. So yeah, that is a bit of before and after our time with UbiOps in a sense.
That's great. I mean, yeah, 3 or 4 days. I think usually people say it takes a few months to get this done right. So yeah, that's pretty
Yeah,
great.
yeah, exactly. For
Uh,
a small team like ourselves, that was very nice to see.
yeah, and on top of that, since you're a small team, you could carry on moving quickly and not lose time there. So yeah, great to hear. Um, so in terms of your solution that you provide, what is the most important requirement that you need to get fulfilled for your models to be successful? So do you need, really fast models? Do you need really ultra low latency or real time use? Um, do you need a high amount of security? Do you have fluctuating demand? Those kinds of things. Like what's required for your solution to be successful?
Right. So in our case, we're not so much worried about security, for instance, as we're dealing with coral reef data. It's not very sensitive data. But of course, that is great to know that UBOS has been handling that properly as well. Um, but our main, let's say, focus point that we wanted to look for was simplicity in terms of version control, as we have various versions of our model out there that we have trained on different sets of data, and our partners that are scattered around the globe. We're still in a very early phase of our development, so we're still looking to try out different versions of our model. And UbiOps provides that in a great manner, the version controlling and the ability to just select another version, and that is the one that is spin out in a matter of less than 30 seconds or so. So yeah, that ability to really manage and monitor which models you have available on UbiOps, and the ability to select different ones at ease was one of our key points that we really liked about UbiOps, and it's also great for people that are not necessarily technically adept in our team. They can still visualize it and easily select the model at hand. And another thing that's quite important for us is what you mentioned as well, latency. As we have partners that are scattered uh, across the globe in locations where internet speed might not be optimal, as you can imagine, with NGOs focusing on coral reefs, they might be on a small island or so with not a great internet access. So the fast serving of our models anywhere in the world was a crucial factor to us, and that is something that UPOps has been managing automatically, and we haven't faced any issues on this side as well. So yeah, that has been great.
Great. Yeah. What would you actually say has been your kind of core technical challenge that you've had to face?
Well, like I mentioned several times, we have quite a small team, so it's hard to manage a lot of aspects that big companies usually develop in-house, I'd say. Um, so, like I mentioned, the speed of execution that UBOS provides, but the clarity as well. And one thing that I actually haven't mentioned before is we used to train our models via VMs and notebooks to test out during experimentation phases. But UBOS offers a training pipeline itself, which is also very clear and intuitive. And we've been taking advantage of that as well. So all those little things that an ML ops tool such as UbiOps handles for you are crucial in the sense of our small capacity at Reef Support.
That's really cool. Um, so you actually kind of touched on something there, like the size of your team. So in addition to any kind of technical challenges, would you say you have any kind of organizational challenges that you also have to tackle?
Yeah, of course. As a small team, it's you're dealing on different ends of uh, your company. If I'm the CTO, so I'm not only working on development, but I'm also touching up on a lot of other aspects of the company. But for example, my co-founder, he's not working on developing the solution itself, more reaching out to partners and so. And the version control, for example, the ability, like I mentioned, to properly monitor which models are available, which at which states of training they are. If one has been updated with more data and so on. All of that is quite clearly visible on the UbiOps dashboard. So his ability for him to also be able to easily select a model, but also to assess how many requests come in, where your requests are usually coming from as well. Um, that is great for the small team that we have in terms of organization as well.
Right. Okay, so we've touched on some technical challenges, organizational challenges, and sort of what you need at the end of the day to be successful. Um, so how would you say you've tackled all this? How would you say you've gone about addressing all these challenges to make sure that you can deliver a good solution to your customers?
Yeah, I think as a startup, you always have to think about ease of execution and try to move fast in an agile manner. Um, so that is something that we dealt with a lot in the past, trying to create a full proper infrastructure like big companies usually do so, and we've lost quite a bit of time doing so. I have to admit in the beginning. So now, yeah, we have a completely different mindset from we learned from our mistakes in the past, and the way we see things now is to just do things in the simplest manner as possible. And UbiOps is something that really does allow that for all our everything that's ML related on our side is handled by UbiOps. For example, this week even I had an issue with our billing account at GCP. So UbiOps actually also has the ability to combine with whatever cloud solution you're using. So let it be Google, Azure, or AWS. So UBOS handles the orchestration for us, but then we are still using our Google credits that we have as a startup. And that means that UBOps is using Google machines for all the compute power and so. So we had an issue this week with our billing account, and I even got notified immediately by someone at UbiOps itself that noticed that our service is stopped when I noticed it as well. So that was another little great thing. But as soon as the issue was resolved, our models were immediately available again as UbiOps handles that whole orchestration, that whole restarting of the solution. So that those little things are I would say very important for startups to look at which solutions out there simplify your life, um, help you deal with those small issues at a faster state, faster rate, and just keep things simple in a sense. Why try to reinvent the wheel if it already exists essentially?
Yeah, yeah. I hear that a lot. Yeah, I think almost every session I have, someone ends up having some form of that sentiment there. Yeah, why reinvent the wheel
Mhm.
when you've got a solution out there already? Um, so yeah, talking about GCP, um, how did you actually decide whether to build your own local infrastructure, which a lot of people do, or to go for the clouds, or to opt for some hybrid solution of both of those together. How did you make that decision for Reef Support?
Yeah, I think having a local infrastructure can be a great cost saving thing if you have the capacity for it. For us, it would have been a very big learning curve to set it up, and would have been also quite cost heavy. And one thing, like I mentioned, that is important for us is the global access of our solutions. So it just made sense to go for a cloud solution that is out there. And as a startup, you can also leverage a bit the fact that they do offer a lot of different credit solutions and support plans for small teams such as ourselves. So that's why we made a decision to go for cloud instead of building our own infrastructure in that sense. But like I mentioned, it is also important to try to combine these cloud solutions in the simplest sense, as they do offer so many various servers that you can utilize, and it can get quite overwhelming. So each one of them comes with a learning curve as well. Some of them are really useful, but some are just not at all though meant for a small company such as ourselves. So it just makes sense to look at what is actually available out there and what simplifies your life in that sense. So that's why UPOs came also at the perfect time for us, as it was something that I was looking for to combine with our GCP usage in that sense.
Right, right. Not to mention the cost, right? Building local infrastructure is it can be prohibitively expensive, right?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Um, so scaling AI, we're talking about getting an increasing number of requests coming in once you take your model from training and development into production. It's not just about compute. You also need to manage it, retrain it, um, update live, increasingly active deployments, monitor their performance, etc. Um, how have you been able to address this in a scalable way?
uh, so it hasn't been difficult for us to do so, as everything is actually managed as well by the UBO's orchestration platform as well. So on our side, we always are on the lookout for increased usage of our platform, and that is also something that we're learning how to approach that properly. But like I mentioned, even from a non-technical point of view, you can properly visualize all the different usage, not only from the request, the amount that comes in, but also the actual usage of the VMs that you're using in combination with the MLOps orchestration. Um, so that visualization has been very helpful for us to properly monitor how our machines are being used, and how the usage is also growing. And from that dashboard itself, from the UBIOS platform itself, you can actually manage how many compute instances you run, how they're scattered, what their size is. So all of that is actually automated with also set limits of usage and so on. So if it reaches a certain threshold, a new machine can automatically spin out. So yeah, for a small team, again, that is something that I do not have always the time to deal with. So having that automated on our side is super useful, and that's, yeah, I guess how we're dealing with scaling as well in our sense. It's been a very simple process, much more simple than I thought it would be, and I think that's also thanks to using a tooling platform such as UBOs.
Great. So, um, what does uh, what does your team kind of look like as a kind of team that's working with data science, but that's using a an MLOps tool like UbiOps? Have you had to hire ML engineers or data engineers, et cetera? Like, what does your team look like?
We have a very small team, so we're mostly working with uh, interns that are also doing research and internships on our side. But in terms of data, uh, we do have sometimes people that are helping out here and there, not only interns but also freelancers, and the ability to easily also give them access to the platform is something that we do, for example. But yeah, we always have a varying team, small team as well. So it's difficult to manage sometimes, but the ability to do so very simply with UbiOps is also I guess a nice outcome.
Right, I was gonna say, because yeah, it's not only that your team is small, it's that it's also you know, changing a lot pretty consistently. So yeah, interesting. Um, so we've we've talked a lot about UbiOps. Is there a specific feature that you would bring up, like pipelines, support for hybrid or multi clouds, the client libraries, version control, training, anything?
Yeah, so we are using the client library mostly, and that has been great. So before actually having started using UbiOps, we already had a Python Flask backend set up to be used with our React frontend. And so the Python client library for UbiOps is very well documented, very easy to set up. The whole process, like I mentioned, only took us 3 days to get started with. It's very simple to use, and so that was great to see. It can also be properly used in combination with our notebooks for the training instances during experimentation. So that's our main usage. You also mentioned version control, so that's another thing that I mentioned that we use quite a bit to properly select and visualize um, what model is currently being used and select different ones. And one thing that I'm actually looking for now is the pipeline feature. So the pipeline feature, it allows you to select different models that you have available on UbiOps and run them in the pipeline. It's quite intuitive, as the name specifies. And we are currently experimenting with some pre-processing layers for color correction of underwater images, for example, before the actual classification segmentation stage of our pipeline. So those features are the main ones that we're looking out for. And yeah, it's been all very properly documented and haven't faced any concerning issues so far in that sense. So yeah.
That's good to know. For those that aren't aware, I'll just give a little bit of a summary of some of those features that you mentioned. So, client libraries. So, UbiOps as a platform can be used through our web app or through an IDE, through a terminal, wherever you tend to do your data science. We have an extensive API library, so users can access basically any of our features and functionalities from wherever they prefer to work, Jupyter notebooks, wherever you like. Pipelines is probably one of our most popular features. Basically, it allows users to chain together multiple objects like deployments or even other like sub pipelines, um, as well as standardizing workflows with basically a selection of predefined functions. So you can do conditional functions, basic math, that kind of thing. Um, they're a great way to optimize your use of computing resources, reduce your costs, basically work in a more manageable, modular kind of way. So yeah, that's a couple of our features. Just a bit of a spotlight there. Um, so Johan, there's one last question for me that I'd like to ask you. If you had to give sort of one piece of advice to a team out there that's looking to deploy a machine learning model, what would that piece of advice be?
I'd say keep it simple. Again, there's no point in reinventing the wheel if it's already out there. Yeah, one thing that we dealt with was complexity and the different the large availability of different options out there in terms of approaching the putting into production of your solution. Um, but the simpler, the better. And even if you might think that it might be expensive to go for a solution that is out there, in our sense, that actually has been very much cost saving because first of all, it allows us to optimize our time, which is the most important cost saving thing I'd say, but just the simplicity and the speed of execution with using a tooling solution out there, it's I really recommend going that route and not trying to create a whole complex infrastructure. If you're a small team, if you're a big company, that's a whole other question. But if you're a small team like ourselves, small to medium, I'd say that using a service tool that simplifies this whole process for you is the best way to go about it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, for a smaller team, it can really make a huge difference. Um, to be honest, for larger teams, I mean, everybody's concerned with being fast with time. So it can help everyone really. If anything, actually, when you have a larger team, um, your projects tend to be bigger and you start having to hire even more people, which gets even more expensive. So if you can reduce those costs, that can actually have an even larger impact. Um, just looking at time here, I think we do in fact have some time for going over some trends before we jump into the Q&A. So why don't we let's talk about what's trending right now. So what would you say is trending right now in the world of marine biology or ecology or computer vision, wherever you feel like your kind of niche is?
Yeah, so I'd say in terms of computer vision, we've seen, I mean, just in the AI general, we've seen a lot of very interesting developments the last few months, years, I'd say the last year especially. And also in terms of computer vision, like I mentioned, there's been great advancements in segmentation models that are out there, and that is something that we're always keeping an eye on to also apply those solutions for marine purposes. So that's one of the key focuses at Reef Support, constantly using that innovation to apply it for the good of the oceans. Um, but one thing that I also particularly like seeing is first of all, it's a great thing that the AI research industry is very focused on open science, be it bigger companies and research universities and so on. So all that development, the ability to touch upon it, it's a great thing. One research point that I really like seeing is the focus that's being placed also on edge computing. So the ability to spin out these models and put them on smaller devices, which is one of our ambitions at Resupport to also um, apply our machine learning models with robotic solutions to actually scale also the monitoring process underwater at a much more rapid way. And that has been I've been seeing a lot of improvement in there. Also, the ability for smaller models that are much smaller in size than the big ones that you need a big cloud infrastructure for. And but they're still keeping the same, almost the same performance in terms of quality that it's producing. It's a great thing to see because those smaller models can eventually be put into smaller devices, like I mentioned. Um, and yeah, those advancements, those trends, I'm really looking forward to even seeing even more improvements in that sense. I think great solutions will come out of it. It's going to allow for a better for more AI solutions and more data collection to get done in the global sense. So not only related to coral reefs, but to everything marine related, I believe. And that's just going to provide us an even more accurate and clearer picture of what is actually happening underwater. And yeah, all that data can be then translated to different solutions, and that's something that I'm very much looking forward to.
Great. Where do you actually see the most value? Where do you see the most value coming from?
For ourselves, it's obviously the advancements of these zero shot, for example, classifiers, these segmentation models that just perform great out of the box, that you don't require a lot of training data for, uh, but just work great in a global sense that can be immediately applied to specific solutions. One that I can think of is Segmented Anything by Meta, for example, or the latest YOLO models. Those were great out of the box with very little training required. and they're very fast and very um, small, even like I mentioned. So those advancements in that area is very valuable for our activities at Reef Support.
Awesome. Do you see anything coming as being like the next huge trend? Like we've had generative AI. I mean, that's still ongoing, but you know, do you see anything that's pretty huge that's going to be kind of rocking the space?
I think what you mentioned, these huge models have been mostly applied um, to the language, to textual AI, and from what I can see, there's been a lot of research that's being applied to also translating these models into multi-model solutions. So models that are that can take in any type of input, and I think that's going to also lead to a lot of more advancements in a lot of key areas, such as ours as well, where these enormous models can be applied then to um, segmentation tasks, object detection tasks, so a lot of different image recognition tasks as well, and not just dealing with text in that sense. That's going to have enormous impacts in a lot of fields, and I hope it's going to bring a lot of positive as well to for our marine environment.
And what do you think the impact will be overall um, of new trends, new technology? Um, you're trying to save the coral reefs, right? What do you see as being the kind of measurable impact in the next few years on the ecosystem?
Right. That's a tough question to answer, but I genuinely believe that it's going to bring a lot of good as well. Like new advancements in AI technology, sometimes it can seem scary because it's moving at a very rapid rate. But the impact it provides in the scientific world, the speed of research that improves, but also the speed of execution um, for non-AI researchers, but I mean just in a general sense for example for the people that we're dealing with that are monitoring coral reefs, replacing some of their menial tasks that even them would like to see automated. Those types of things are going to have enormous impacts because it not only saves them times but allows them to more effectively spend their time in things that actually bring positive impact. Um, so yeah, that's something that I think is going to happen not only with core monitoring, but in a lot of different key areas that are important for planets overall. So just the speed of execution, scaling solutions, just a more rapid research overall, not just AI related, but just overall research moving at a much faster rate. It's going to bring a lot of positive impact to our environment.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I mean, that's something I see the most actually with computer vision applications is because it's in multiple areas, right? You're seeing this in pathology and in healthcare. You see this even in like infrastructure, right? Public infrastructure, like train tracks and that kind of thing. Um, yeah, just the amount of time that it can save people is incredible, and not just people, but like really experienced, really skilled resources that are you know quite expensive. So and their time is very valuable. So um, yeah, really cool to see what's coming in the future. Um, Right. Well, I think we might as well move on to the Q&A at this point. I can see a couple questions in the chat, so I'm going to pick up one from uh, Mayna, who left this a little while ago. Sorry, from AD. Hi, Johan. I started an environmental impact club for students in middle and high school in my community to help kids learn how they can use technology for social good today. Does your organization offer any learning opportunities or STEM projects to young high school students so they can explore and pursue career paths like yours and support organizations like Reef Support?
Uh, right, that's a very interesting question from Adi. That's actually something that we really much enjoy doing at Reef Support is also teaching the next generation as to why it's important to also have a positive mindset towards our planet and really focus on understanding why it's important to protect it and the actions that you can take to do so. We've done a few interventions at different younger programs at schools, and I think that we can definitely connect to discuss if there's an opportunity in that sense. Something we also do, but not at a high school level, is we have a training program for conservationists with different partner NGOs that are focusing not only on coral reef monitoring, but also working with protection programs, for example. We connect these volunteers with these organizations to create a tailored um, training program for them as well. But that's, I think, not relevant in your question, Ati. But yeah, great question, and I'd love to connect if to see if something is possible in that sense.
Great. I have another question here from Maina. How is Reef Support different from software such as TagLab? And do you do 2D segmentation or also 3D segmentation?
Right, that's an interesting question. So for those who are not aware, TagLab is a solution out there, a more recent one, also focused on automating the annotation of coral reef images. If I'm correct, unless it has changed recently, TagLab is, like I mentioned, also focused on automating the annotation task itself. At Reef Support, we're really looking at eliminating this annotation task entirely, and putting our solutions also in different robotics solutions out there. So we're really creating a full automated segmentation model is our goal here. And for the second part of your question for 3D segmentation, it's also something that we're looking um, uh, that we're working on as well is applying our segmentation models on 3D photogrammetry. But that is still at a very early research phase, as it's quite a difficult task to solve. But it's something that we're actively looking for 3D photogrammetry images. We also did a bit of research on automating the creation of these 3D models itself based on the uh, say benthic images that are collected. Um, so yeah, it might be confusing for those who are not aware of exactly what TagLab is, but I hope I answered your question there.
I have another question here from Stefan. Talking from the perspective of small teams that are interested in experimenting with LLMs, how easy is it to swap out various models on UbiOps? If you want to compare between open source models or maybe ChatGPT or something closed source.
So at Resupport, we have an experience with LLMs, but I believe UbiOps is their platform is very easy to connect as well. If you use a client library with various solutions out there, such as Hugging Face, for example, and so where you can actually use the Hugging Face model in combination with the UbiOps pipeline to serve your solution. I think that's very doable, but yeah, it's not something that we have experimented at Reef Support itself. So it's quite difficult to answer the question, but I think it's certainly doable. And again, UbiOps is also such a complex. It's very easy to set up, so I'd recommend to just give it a try and see if it applies to what you're looking for.
I think I could probably jump in on this one as well. So um, yeah, in terms of swapping in and out various models on UbiOps, yeah, it's as easy as deploying it on the platform, and then whether you want to train it or you want to deploy it live in production, um, you can do that quite easily, really. If you want to compare between different types of models, that can also be done by just kind of deploying them in the platform and then comparing them across various metrics like how much compute users they have, how fast they are, how many requests are coming in, that sort of thing. And so then you can make a more informed decision on whether you want to pick closed source or open source. Also in terms of fine tuning or implementing RAG, you can do that as well. And you can kind of see what kind of performance gains you're getting there and compare between when you're running it on a CPU versus on a GPU, that kind of thing. So I have a question here. What is the accuracy of Reef Support's AI, and how do you handle false positives or false negatives?
That's an interesting question. So in terms of accuracy, it really depends on the data that we're testing on. So we've seen that our model has very varying accuracies ranging from between 75 to 83%, if I'm correct out of my head, with different locations. So it's still in an early phase. It does require a lot of improvement as you want as accurate segmentation possible, um, as it's very important to get these measurements correct for proper reporting, proper assessment of how the restoration efforts, how the conservation efforts are moving along, and if there's a reducement of the coral cover size, for example, then it's also very important to have it as a proper number. So those things is something that we're actively looking to improve on. But again, it does vary depending on the data that we've had so far to train on. We see that it performs better on those ocean sets than different varying regions out there. And color correction is something that we're looking into as a phase as well, to standardize the colors across the images, as we've seen that different aperture, different water conditions also have a big impact on our models. And I believe there was a second part of that question, if I'm
About how to handle false positives and false negatives, sort of, sensitivity, specificity, that sort of thing.
All right, so we're still in an early phase again. So we handle that by trying to have an active feedback as well to our models. So we leave that to the user for now to properly tell us if the model is not performing properly. But again, we're still in a re experiment and trial phase of our solution. So that's still something that we're looking to see how to properly do that process as well.
I would add on this. What are you sort of more concerned about? Are you more concerned about catching every possible true positive or true negatives? Like what's more important to you for your solution?
Definitely true positive. It's more important to properly um, say if an entity underwater is a coral, because we're very much focused for now, not specifically on in-depth species classification, but more on actually measuring if it's a hard or soft coral. So it's quite a
Mhm.
still um, a high up layer of classification, I'd say. So in that sense, the actual accuracy of getting the coral cover as close as possible to what it is, without it really caring if the rest is coral or not, is um, is our focus for now.
Right. Um, I have a question here from Philippe. Any recommendations to reduce energy or CO2 equivalent for training and for inference?
Yeah, I think for that, it really comes down to efficiency and which cloud provider you use. So, like I mentioned, UbiOps can be combined with with various sets of cloud providers, and I know a lot of cloud providers out there. They are focused on creating sustainable infrastructures as well. That, for example, combine their cloud centers with heating solutions, heating creations, or proper using sustainable energy for sources, for example. So those can be used in combination with UbiOps for one. But I just think in the overall sense, it really comes down to having a clearer orchestration, having a more minimize as much as you can your compute usage. And if all of that is automated and you don't have yourself to do that manually, it is much more efficient. So in that sense, if you could set it up, I'd recommend looking at UbiOps as well for that, as it does so for us in our team.
Yeah. So yeah, I can add to that. So UbiOps, we do work with multiple green HPC cloud providers in the European Union. For example, Bytesnet, they're based in the Netherlands, and they basically all the heat that's generated from running their data centers goes to actually heating up local neighborhoods. So it's all kind of goes back into the cycle. So yeah, we do work with various providers like that to make sure that we're trying to make as little of an environmental impact as possible. I think I can take one or two last questions. I have here, so at which stage in your, I'm not sure if you mentioned this at the beginning, but at which stage in the development of your service or your proof of concept did you get started with UbiOps?
At the production stage, so when we were finally able to, so the whole R&D process before actually would have been simpler to do if we had UbiOps at the time. But we started using UbiOps at the time where we were finally able to put our model into production, to actually test out with our partners on their real life data that they continuously collect. So at that stage is when we finally approach UbiOps, but now we actually do use UbiOps also at early stages of our development.
Great. Right. Yes. Yeah. You mentioned that you're also doing model training as well. Okay. Um, what do you see as, whether you're facing it now or you can see it coming in the future, what do you see as your biggest barrier to scalability?
I think it really comes down to our small team again and how fast we can execute new changes that come in. I think the AI scene is moving at a very rapid pace, and sometimes it can be quite overwhelming to keep up with it. So that is our main challenge as well, is looking at how we can actually improve our solutions, as we're also doing a lot of R&D in other areas. We're trying to create a plastic tracking solution, also using computer vision, but for satellite data. We're also trying to actively track coral reefs also with satellite data. So those are very different uh, things that we're looking at. So that is our main challenge in keeping up with the feedback that we get from our partners, keeping up with the advancement in AI, in the AI field with the small team that we have, is probably the ones that we're going to be facing for a while. You know.
I have another question here from Philippe, so let's make sure we get this in before the end of the session. Do you make partnerships with other companies to share data or IT resources?
Um, so for IT resources, I'm not sure if that question is more meant to Reef Support or UbiOps, but
That could be for me, yeah.
for our sense, at Reef Support, we're really advocating for open science as well. So our solutions are available at free of charge for now, with their focus on reef solutions, reef monitoring. Um, and we also try to share all the research that we find. Our data is not easily accessible, but that is something certainly that can also be discussed. So for partnerships, we're always open to hear out if someone is interested in partnering with us. So definitely do reach out and do check out our website. Something that I haven't mentioned as well is just reef.support if you want to check it out. But I'm also actively available on LinkedIn as well. So yeah, feel free to reach out to me here or via our contact page on our website.
I'll give the UbiOps side to that. So yeah, UbiOps we have partnerships with various different kind of companies. I mentioned cloud HPC providers previously, but we also work with NVIDIA. We work with Oracle, with various other platforms, Azure, um, to make sure that people are able to run their models through our platform and have access to all the supporting infrastructure and tools that they need. So I'm not sure what in particular you have in mind, but feel free to get in touch either with myself or through front of my colleagues. You can reach out to us via our website ubiops.com, and yeah, happy to speak with you. Okay, well, I think we've managed to cover all the questions, which is great. And we're pretty much at time, so I'll just close everything off. So that is all the questions. Johan, thank you so much again for joining me today and for sharing your insights on using AI to create a sustainable environment.
Yeah, thank you, Ivan, for having me. Thank you to UbiOps as well for having helped us out so far in our solution. And thank you, everyone, for joining today. I hope you enjoyed this session. It was very nice, very interesting for ourselves as well.
Indeed. Thank you, everyone, for joining us and for making this session such a great time. I'm really looking forward to our next live session. It should be about a month from now. Typically, we have one of these every month, but we'll keep you posted on LinkedIn and in our monthly newsletter. So make sure to subscribe to those for any updates. You can find links in the session description or on our website, ubiops.com. We're also going to be posting a recording of today's chat on our YouTube channel, which we do with all of our sessions. So if you want to rewatch it, share it with a friend, or check out one of our other recordings, then go ahead and check out the UbiOps YouTube channel. And while you're there, why not subscribe? Why not do that? So for those of you with any unanswered questions that have maybe come in through a different platform or maybe just didn't have time to type them down, you can always join our Slack community. We have the website we have the link on our website, ubiops.com. If you have a question there, one of our community members will definitely help you out. Or if you'd just like to learn more about UbiOps, you can head over to our website. We've got guides, tutorials, use cases, everything you need to know more about the platform. As a parting note, if you felt like any of the challenges that Johan brought up applied to you or your team, remember you can always reach out to us for more information or guidance, or you can check out our website. We're here to help. So once again, I'm Ivan Fafchamps from UbiOps. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next time.